Do as I say, not as I do. I couldn't conceive an adage more true for someone who loves to dish out advice. But to take it myself, I have to think twice. That's the beginning of a poem that I wrote that I will link in the description about this concept of giving advice, but then not necessarily knowing how to follow it ourselves. And sometimes that can get in our way and we can be the biggest roadblocks to our own success. And I think that when we notice ourselves doing this, it can actually offer a ton of insight into ways that we can help other people. And so I want to come at this topic from a different angle, from the do as I say, not as I do, and look at it more as a way to help you discover your niche, what you're meant to be helping other people through. And this is all inspired by a conversation I had about 15 minutes ago, and I will explain what happened on that call and why it's inspired me to record this video impromptu, and I hope that it's helpful. This is something that I think about a lot, actually, so here's a place where I'm just going to try to put it all together. But before we get into that, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel. I also recently released a poetry book, so if you like poetry, I encourage you to check it out. It's called Create and Receive, Make and Believe, Finding Peace Through Primarily Positive Poetry. I also have a free downloadable poetic pep talk designed to get you in an inspired, motivated state to begin your day. It's less than 10 minutes. It's a free download, so all of that is linked in the description. So, something that I have always noticed about myself, well, always being since I started working as a speech coach, where I'm helping people navigate their fear of public speaking, their social anxiety, their overall confidence, I have noticed that I am very good at teaching people things that I had to learn myself. I think I'm a decent speech coach because I used to hate public speaking. And I've been through the process, and I can say, here's what it looks like on the other side. Here's how it feels to like public speaking. Here's how it feels to present yourself with confidence. And yes, I still get jitters from time to time, but here's how it feels to trust yourself to be able to navigate that. And so I find it a lot easier to teach those concepts because I've lived them. And I trust that it works because it worked for me. Whereas there are other things that I think I'm naturally better at that I don't know how to teach. So, for example, I write poetry, and multiple people actually have asked me, like, why don't you teach poetry? But I don't know how to teach poetry because I didn't study poetry. I mean, I took, high school poetry, literature classes, whatever, but I've never had very in-depth specific instruction on poetry, and most of my poems I don't think follow any rules. I just do it. It comes more naturally to me, and I've always found it harder to teach things that I wasn't taught myself. And so I'm sharing this because I think for anyone struggling to decide what they should teach or what their contribution to the world is meant to be, I think a lot of times that comes organically through life experience. But if you're sitting there and trying to analyze, what is my purpose? How can I help? How can I serve the world? I would ask yourself, what challenges have you overcome? And what have you had to learn that you learned and you tackled it and you checked the box? Because maybe that means that now you're in a position to be able to teach that to someone else. And that doesn't mean you have to be a coach or a teacher or an instructor in a formal sense, but maybe that leads you to mentor, or it leads you to maybe you write books where the character learns these lessons or whatever. So you can get creative with how that actually comes to fruition. You don't necessarily, like I said, need to be a coach. But I think that everyone's purpose in some way centers around giving back and contributing to the world. And very often that's in the form of our own wisdom that we glean from experience. So I think a lot of times we kind of get this backwards where we think, oh, if I'm good at something, then I can teach it. And that is absolutely true. So if there's a very talented musician wants to teach people music, that makes sense. But I'm just so curious how that feels. Because for me, for example, another example from my personal life is I naturally have a really good memory. I don't know why, I'm just blessed with it. And there are things that I do to improve my memory. There are things that I do to memorize things, but I typically am able to memorize fairly easily. I'm typically able to remember details from conversations fairly easily. And so when people ask me how to memorize, I'm kind of stumped. I mean, I know I can tell people what I do, but it doesn't take me that much effort. Yes, there are strategies to repeat and chunk and all of that stuff that I do use to help me remember things. But I also recognize that I'm naturally in a different position than someone else. Just like when my brother, for example, he's very athletic, when he tried to teach me how to surf or he's tried to teach me how to skateboard and he's like, just do it. And I'm like, what do you mean just do it? Like I couldn't grasp it. I needed more explicit instruction. And I think when something comes to us very naturally, it's actually harder to teach than if we've had to learn it ourselves. So voice work, for example, I've done a lot of work on my speaking voice, not because I wanted to or thought I needed to, but because when I was an intern at a speech coaching company, I was told that I had to as part of the internship. And it was a big struggle for me in the beginning because that wasn't something I pursued. It wasn't something that I ever really thought about. But because I had that explicit instruction on how to make my voice healthier, now I'm able to guide clients towards making their voices healthier as well. And I don't have to say, well, just do it because I wasn't able to just do it. Same with public speaking. I wasn't able to just get over it, just get over the nerves. I have to use still a lot of strategies to calm me down. And so I started thinking about all of this because I'm going to be on a podcast in a few weeks, and the man who's organizing it all was asking me about my business, because the format of the podcast is that two very accomplished business people will kind of have a conversation, and then a more novice entrepreneur will be there and they can give guidance and advice to that entrepreneur. I was selected as the kind of beginner person, which is apropos. And so the man doing the research for the episode was asking me questions about my business, and I was telling him that I have roadblocks marketing myself. And maybe that's something these more experienced people, business professionals, can help me with, because I don't really like to self-promote. I very much believe in the work that I do. I've gotten a lot of really nice feedback on my book and my spoken word poems and my online course, which is available on Udemy. It's called Show Up Sure, Secrets to Embody Confidence for a Lifetime. And I fully believe in all of those products and services, but it's so hard for me to promote it. And when I look at all this advice about marketing and online entrepreneurship and being a solopreneur and online marketing and all of that, it's so much about like, tell people how awesome your product is, and here's, all these strategies that go into marketing, which I agree with. They're great, but I just find it so challenging to do that myself and to talk about myself that way. And when I just mentioned like, yeah, that would be helpful advice from them, the man literally stopped and went, now isn't that interesting? It felt like from a movie, but that's like exactly how he said it. He's like, isn't that interesting? Because your whole business is around inspiring people to achieve their dreams. You're all about empowering people. You're all about building people's confidence, yet you struggle with promoting yourself and marketing and getting out of your own way. He didn't say the getting out of your own way part, but that's what I struggle with. But he was just pointing out how interesting it is that it's so much easier to coach other people on things that we have a hard time doing ourselves. And I've just been reflecting on that, and I think it is really interesting because yes, I'm good at empowering people and making people feel good, but if someone asked me for a business plan, I would not by any means tell them that I'm their gal because I don't know how to do that. And now I'm like, maybe I should hire a business coach and a strategist so that I can learn the strategy and then later teach that to people if I want to. But that doesn't really excite me so much, so who knows? But what does excite me is the thought of helping people get out of their own way, because I can see other people doing it and I can see myself doing it, but it's so much easier to tell someone else not to do it than it is to get out of my own way. And another point on this that I think is so hugely helpful, we learn when we teach other people. So I will say that I still hated public speaking the first probably 4 or 5 years that I was a speech coach. And I didn't do it very often. I worked with people one-on-one. I didn't actually go and teach big audiences or speak in front of large crowds. But as I was teaching people one-on-one, even though some of the stuff I was saying, I was like, oh, I still get nervous, but I'm telling them how to not get nervous. I eventually learned it myself by repeating it so many times and by having to embody that energy in the session. So I had to go into the session convincing these people that I was good at what I was saying I was good at, or that I was good at what I was helping them to be good at. And it made me better. And I don't know that I would have learned as much as I learned about being a speaker if I hadn't taught it. And I continue to teach it. And so I wonder, I had not thought about this before, but it's coming to me now. I'm like, maybe I should start teaching people, holding their hands how to create their business, because that would help me create my own. But I don't think I'm qualified for that. So anyway, for you, if there's something that you are learning about and you feel like you've overcome it, teaching it to someone else is only going to make you better at that thing. It's only going to help you overcome your own battle even further. So I do believe we need to start from a certain baseline, which is why I don't feel at all qualified to help someone build a business. I mean, I do give people advice on how to get started. I can give people advice on how to start your Instagram and be consistent with it. And even though I don't have a bajillion followers on YouTube yet, I'm very consistent with it. So I'm happy to give advice in that realm. But with speech coaching, I have a master's degree and I did an internship and I did lessons for myself for an entire year. And then I started as a coach. And even though when I started as a coach, I wasn't totally proficient, I had a baseline level of education where I felt comfortable helping other people. And I wasn't using people to make me a better speaker. But as a byproduct of teaching those lessons, I became a better speaker in ways I didn't intend to, just by virtue of having to embody that energy and teach it to someone else. So I would say, get curious with yourself. If you're looking for another venture or you're wanting to serve people in another way, and just ask, like, what doesn't come naturally to me that I've learned to get good at? And see if there's a way you can help other people get good at that too. And you'll only get better at that thing. And you'll continue learning and growing. I've actually heard this from a lot of relationship coaches as well. So a lot of relationship coaches have the story of, I was single for so long and then I did all this coaching and now I teach it. Why do they teach it? Because they've been taught it so much that they now feel equipped, and then they eventually were successful with it, and they're in a healthy relationship, and so now they feel qualified to be able to share that. And I'm sure that by sharing it, they're only improving their own relationships. And I've heard stories of coaches who say they started when they were still single and felt like a fraud. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm helping all these other people, but I don't know how to help myself. But then eventually, by virtue of helping all these other people, they learned their own blind spots. They were able to see their own blind spots and help themselves and get through it, and now have healthy relationships. So just a note to say, whatever your challenge is, that's probably more your purpose than the thing that comes naturally to you. Although there's probably a balance, because like I said, poetry comes naturally to me, but I wouldn't be able to perform my poetry if I didn't overcome the challenge of building up my confidence and overcoming my social anxiety and overcoming my fear of public speaking. And so it's overcoming the challenges that often can unlock our natural skills to go to the next degree. I still could have written poetry and just put it in books, and that's fine too. But to be a performance poet, a spoken word artist, I really needed some of those other skills that I had to learn along the way. But I didn't intentionally do that. I didn't even start doing poetry until a few years ago, and I've been doing speech for a decade. So this is a lot about me, but the purpose in me sharing all of this is to say, again, get curious with yourself. Ask yourself, what have I overcome that didn't come naturally to me that now I do well? And see how you can pair that with things that you naturally do well and help people. Teach it to other people. And if there's something you want to get better at, maybe try teaching what you know to other people and you'll improve as well. I started studying Vedic astrology, and I found that I've learned so much about astrology by reading other people's charts by other people saying, can you help me with this? And me saying, actually not really, but let me try. And I'm kind of learning as I go. I'm by no means an astrologer, so I will not call myself that, but I will say I have friends who come and ask me those questions because I know more about it than they do because I've been learning about it for myself. So this really can apply to anything. And I do think the best teachers are the ones who had to learn themselves, because someone who's just naturally good at something doesn't necessarily know how to explain how to get good at it from someone who is starting out at a different level than they were. So write a list of things that you have overcome and that you're now good at, and then write a list of things that come naturally to you. And I'd be so curious. Tell me if this resonates, because I had a meeting with this woman who professionally helps creative people find their niche and build their business. And she told me, why don't you teach poetry? You've been having a masterclass in poetry. And I was like, I can't teach poetry. I mean, maybe I could, but I don't want to, because I feel like that would ruin it for me, because for me, it comes naturally, and to have to sit and dissect where does this come from would be very challenging, I think, and not pleasant, because it would kind of take the magic out of it. But she was like, take whatever it is that you're having a master class in life. And so she didn't know me that well. So maybe she thought that was a good suggestion. But I'm like, really, the master class for me has been the confidence piece and getting comfortable enough to share my poetry. It's not the writing piece itself. Whereas there's so many talented writing teachers. And I don't know that's my calling. Even though I love writing, I don't necessarily love teaching writing. Make sense? So think about it for yourself and challenge yourself with these things, because people may tell you, why don't you teach blah, blah, blah? And maybe you'd be great at it, but maybe you'd be better at teaching something they wouldn't have assumed. Anyway, I've made my point like 7 times. So thank you so much for watching. If you're curious about any of my courses, I'm trying to get better at self-promotion. So please check out the links in the description. Let me know what you think of this video. And thank you so much for tuning in.